They gave her away for 2 mules and a sack of oats. Said she was cursed, bad blood, touched by shadows. The man who called himself her father wouldn't even look her in the eye as he led her by the wrist through the mud-streaked street of Marrow Creek, toward the edge of the chapel yard. She didn't cry, just looked at the sky like she was memorizing the shape of the clouds. The priest waited by the fence, silent, hands folded like he was praying, but not quite. He wore dust and sorrow like a second skin, a thin silver cross swinging at his chest. No one spoke when he took the girl in. Not even the wind. She was 17, small for her age. Long black hair cut ragged like someone had hacked it off in a fit of anger. A fading bruise darkened the side of her neck. Her name was Alma. He gave her a blanket and a cot in the back of the chapel, where the stone walls wept in winter and mice scratched in the beams. She didn't ask questions, just swept the floor, lit the candles, and slept with her back to the door. People came for the priest's sermons, but no one looked at the girl. Mothers pulled their children close. Old men muttered prayers under their breath. They said she'd been born under a dying star, that her mother bled out screaming Alma's name, that cattle dropped dead near her and horses refused to be ridden. No one questioned why the priest had taken her in. Maybe they feared him too. Or maybe they figured a cursed girl belonged with a man already marked by grief. He said his name was Father Enoch. She watched him closely. The way he never touched the bread during communion. How he flinched when a baby cried. How he looked out at the dry hills after the sermon, always waiting, like he expected someone to come. One night, she caught him cleaning a pistol behind the chapel. Not a priest's weapon. This one was worn smooth, with etchings of blood and gold. He didn't notice her at first. "You ain't praying," she said. His eyes met hers. Steady. Cold. "Neither are you." They didn't speak again that night, but she knew then. This man was no priest, and he knew she wasn't cursed. He was hiding just like her. Different shadows. Same cold. She started leaving bread by his door. He began fixing the leaks in her roof, and the town kept whispering. They never saw the gun under his coat. They never saw the kindness in her silence. They never imagined the day she would stand in the doorway of that chapel, clutching a wounded man to her chest as blood soaked the dirt beneath her feet, and say, "He would have died if I hadn't found him," and he, broken and breathless, would whisper, "She saved my life. Would you call it a curse or a second chance?" The mornings came with frost on the chapel windows and the hush of something unspoken. Alma woke before the bell rang, before the roosters dared break the silence. She moved like smoke, soft-footed, careful not to stir the past that clung to the corners of every wooden beam. Father Enoch, if that was his name, kept his coat hung by the door and his saddlebags packed, as if he never intended to stay. His bed was always made tight. The pistol stayed under his pillow, but days passed, then weeks, and something strange began to settle in. Not comfort, not quite, something quieter, a kind of peace that only grows. In the cracks of grief, they didn't speak much, but there were small gestures. He left an apple by her cot once. She stitched the hem of his coat when the wind tore it loose. He set another plate on the table without saying a word. She poured his coffee with hands that no longer trembled. Some evenings, they sat by the fire. No words. Just the snap of kindling and the sound of one life, not being so alone anymore. In those silences, a kind of trust took root. Fragile as a lamb's first step, but real. He showed her how to mend a fence post, how to check the oil in a lantern. He never praised her aloud, but he left her gloves by the stove when the frost came thick. One afternoon, she found an old book of Psalms on her cot, the name inside scratched out. She kept it anyway, Then came the man in the blue duster. He rode in with dust on his shoulders and a sneer in his voice, asking questions that didn't belong in a chapel, asked if the priest had seen a wanted man, showed a drawing on a crumpled paper, sharp jaw, sunken eyes. The kind of face that had seen too many killings. Father Enoch barely glanced at it. Said he hadn't seen the man, but Alma saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition, and she noticed how his hand twitched near the pistol beneath his coat. The stranger left, but the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. That night, Alma found Enoch in the back of the chapel, loading his gun. He didn't speak, just looked at her, like he'd forgotten how to explain anything to anyone. "You ain't just hiding from the law," she said. He nodded once. "That was all. You done something bad?" His hands paused. "Yeah," she waited. Let the stillness stretch. Then she asked, "You ever done something good?" He blinked, surprised by the question. "I don't know." She didn't ask more. Just walked back to her cot. Left the door cracked open behind her, as if to say, "You can come in if you need to." He didn't. Not that night, but he didn't leave either. The next Sunday, Alma stood beside him during the sermon. Folks stared, whispered. A few got up and left, but she didn't flinch. She handed out bread with steady hands, met each gaze with quiet defiance. Enoch watched her, and for the first time in years. He said the closing prayer with something like belief. Later, by the fire, he asked her something he'd never asked anyone. "Why'd you stay? After what they said about you?" She looked at the flames like they were telling her secrets. "'Cause maybe one day I'll be worth something more than a mule and a sack of oats." He nodded. No words. Just that. That night, rain came, not a storm. Just a quiet drizzle, the kind that taps on rooftops like it's asking to be let in. Alma stood in the doorway and watched it fall. Behind her, Enoch stepped closer. Not touching, just present, he said, almost like a confession. "They called me a monster." Once, she didn't look at him, just whispered, "That don't make it true." A long breath passed between them. He took off his coat, hung it by the door, didn't say goodnight. Didn't need to, and somewhere in the quiet between them, something old began to break. Not just silence, but walls, fear, maybe even fate. And though he still kept the gun loaded, he started to hope he'd never have to use it again. Spring didn't arrive. In Merrow Creek, it crept in, slow and bashful, like a girl afraid to knock on the wrong door. The hills softened to green. The snow in the chapel's shadows turned to mud. And Alma began to laugh, sometimes low, like a secret she barely trusted. Enoch noticed the way she paused by the window, how she lingered at the well just to feel the warmth on her shoulders. He didn't say anything, just watched her like a man seeing fireflies for the first time after a long war. She'd begun leaving the door open during the day, letting in birdsong, sunlight, the scent of sage. It changed the air inside, made it less like a place of penance and more like something trying to become a home that peace held, fragile, trembling, until one evening when a rider came up the ridge. It was just past sundown. The chapel glowed with candlelight. Alma was humming near the stove when the dog barked. A deep, frantic warning. Enoch stepped out the door before she could ask. He knew the silhouette, dusty black coat. Slow, sure steps. A man who didn't ride fast unless he was chasing something. B.O. Mathers, a bounty hunter. Enoch's past had arrived. They stood 10 paces apart. Nothing but the wind between them. "You didn't die out in Blanco like they said," Mathers drawled. Enoch didn't answer. "You look like a man trying to forget his name." Alma appeared in the doorway, the firelight catching the curve of her shoulder. Mathers noticed his mouth curled. "Didn't figure you for the preacher type." Enoch stepped forward. Leave, I came for the girl. Enoch's voice turned iron. She's not wanted. Mathers tossed a paper into the dirt. It fluttered face down. Her blood's got a price, he said. Witch birth, they say. One family out near El Paso still wants her back. Or dead. Alma stood frozen. Enoch looked at her. Then back at Mathers. I've seen real monsters, he said. She ain't one of them. Mathers smirked. You gonna draw on me over a girl you barely know? Enoch didn't flinch. Yeah. It was the first time Alma saw him reach for the gun, like it was part of him. Not a tool, not a relic, but something earned and owned. Mathers read the air. Tension hummed like a rattler ready to strike, but he didn't pull. Not yet. Next time. Mathers said, mounting his horse, I don't ask twice. He left. Dust swallowed his tracks. That night, Alma didn't sleep. She sat near the fire, clutching the paper Mathers had dropped, a sketch of her younger. Eyes darker. Scrawled beneath, daughter of sin, stolen, dangerous, reward if found. Enoch watched her from the shadows. You ain't stolen, he said. After a long time, she turned to him, face unreadable. Then what am I? He hesitated, alive. Here, that's enough. Her eyes welled, but no tears fell. I don't want to run anymore. He nodded. Then we don't. She looked up. He said nothing, but the way he stirred the fire, the way he didn't walk away, that was answer enough. Days passed. They rode out together once, silent trails beneath cottonwood trees. He showed her how to read tracks, how to tie a saddle. She watched him as if learning the truth of him with every step. One evening, she found a sprig of wildflower tucked into the brim of her hat. He didn't say it was from him. Didn't need to dot it to the creek. She told him about the woman who birthed her and bled into the dirt. She sang to me before she died. Alma said, she must have loved you. She called me cursed. He reached out, not to hold her, not yet, just to be near enough for her to choose. You ain't, he said. That spring, wildflowers began to bloom behind the chapel. And one planted them, but they grew anyway, just like her, just like him. The days grew longer. Alma began hanging her wash behind the chapel, where the sun hit strongest. Enoch repaired the back fence, one plank at a time, like it meant something, like he had nowhere else to be. Once, he caught her singing just a few notes. Something old, something not quite sad. He didn't say a word. But that night, he carved a small wooden sparrow and left it on her windowsill. She never mentioned it, but she kept it on the mantel, beside the candle. She never let go out. There was a softness to that season, like they were being borrowed by something kinder than the world. They'd known, but they both knew it wouldn't last. Trouble, when it came, rode on hooves for men, dust covered, guns easy at the hip. They didn't ask for a sermon. They wanted the girl, said the bounty was doubled. Said Bo Mathers had spoken her name in Amarillo. Said she was dangerous, devil-born, and hiding with a killer who wore a priest's collar. The lead one, Jesse Kearns, had a scar like a white worm down his cheek. He looked at Alma the way a man looks at prey. She stood behind Enoch, chin up. Kearns spit in the dust. Ain't no law out here strong enough to stop us. Enoch's hand hovered near his belt. Ain't about law. He stepped forward. Quiet, heavy as thunder. About to break. It's about what I'm willing to lose. Kearns laughed. You think you can take 4 of us? No. He looked back at Alma. Just once, but I can slow you down enough for her to run. Alma moved then, sharper than wind off the peaks. No, she stepped beside him. I'm tired of running. The silence that followed was deeper than any gunshot. Kern's lip curled. "Fine," he said. "Then we'll take you both." And that was the moment, the spark that caught. Enoch drew first, not with speed, with certainty. 2 shots cracked the air, one after the other. Kearns went down. Another man clipped and fell, but the third one shot Enoch in the side before Alma could scream. The fourth lunged toward her, but Alma grabbed the poker from the fire pit and drove it into his ribs. Blood. Mud. The smell of iron and burning pine. When it ended, only 2 of them stood. Enoch stumbled, knees giving out. Alma caught him before he hit the dirt. His blood soaked through her dress. Warm and terrifying, she pressed her hand to the wound. "Stay. Please." He winced. "I ain't leaving." She shook her head. "You're bleeding." He smiled through gritted teeth. "So are you." She hadn't noticed the gash on her arm. They sat there, 2 broken things, bleeding into the soil like roots seeking the same truth. That night, she burned the bodies behind the chapel. Enoch lay inside, pale and breathing shallow. She tended him. Through the dark, whispering stories from the Psalms, stories he'd once pretended to believe. When dawn came, he opened his eyes. "You stayed." He rasped. Her hand never left his. "You did first." He tried to laugh. Couldn't. She brushed hair from his face. "You're not dying," she said. "You're too damn stubborn." And in the pale light, he believed her, not just because she said it, but because, for the first time since he buried his past, he wanted to live. The wound nearly took him. For days, he hovered between breath and silence. Alma stayed beside him, changed his bandages, cooled his fever with cloths dipped in creek water. She didn't pray, not aloud, but her hands never stopped moving. And maybe that was prayer enough. Sometimes he spoke in sleep. Names. Regrets. Gunfire. Blood. Elias. He murmured once, eyes fluttering. "Tell Elias I never meant to leave him." She didn't ask who Elias was. Not then. Instead, she lit another candle and waited. When he finally woke, it was dusk. Shadows long. The chapel's windows painted gold. His voice came dry, but sure. "You stayed." She looked up from her sewing. "You already said that." She smiled. Eyes rimmed red. "I meant it more this time." She stood, walked to the bed. "You remember anything?" He nodded slowly. "Enough to know you saved me." She hesitated. "They might come back." He reached for her hand. "Then I'll be ready." By the second week, he could sit up. By the third, he walked the edge of the fence again, leaning heavy on her arm. She never let go. Spring turned to early summer. The fields behind the chapel shimmered with heat. Wildflowers wilted, but the roots held firm, and with every sunrise, he grew stronger. But there was something else now, something heavier in the air between them. Not distance exactly, just waiting. One night, under a velvet sky, he finally told her about Elias, about the boy he lost. His son, he was 7, Enoch said. "Got caught in a crossfire I started." Alma sat still, not touching him, just listening. "I was chasing a man. Swore he was the worst I'd ever seen. I didn't care who got in the way." He swallowed hard. When the smoke cleared, Elias was lying face down in the dust. He wasn't even supposed to be there. She closed her eyes. "I buried him under a willow. Then I buried my name." When he looked at her, the pain was raw. "That's why I took the collar. I figured if I looked like a holy man, maybe God would forget what I'd done." She reached out slowly and took his hand. "God might," she said softly, "but I won't." His eyes met hers, afraid. "But I'll stay," she added. He didn't cry. Not then, but something inside him broke quiet, like a lock rusted shut for years. Finally giving way, they rebuilt the fence together. He hammered. She held the nails. Some days they didn't speak at all. Others they told stories. Not about pain, about little things. She told him about a cat she once fed behind a butcher's shop. About how she used to make up names for the stars. He told her. About the time he slept under the wagon of a traveling preacher, listening to sermons he didn't believe in. They laughed. It was new. It was sacred. One afternoon, she found him carving another bird. This one smaller, rounder. Is that for me? She asked. He handed it to her. No, he said. It's from you. She didn't understand, not right away, but she held it tight anyway, because sometimes the things we give back are the ones that save us, even if we didn't know we had them to give. The sky turned heavy that morning, thick clouds rolling in from the west. Low and slow like trouble remembering the road back, Alma watched the horizon, arms crossed, wind teasing her skirt. She didn't like the way the crows gathered on the fence. Enoch saw it too, said nothing. Instead, he laid a shotgun near the chapel door. It had been weeks since Bo Mathers. Weeks of rebuilding, of silence turning to laughter, of long rides to gather supplies and conversations whispered under lantern light. But peace never held long out here. Not for men with blood on their boots. Not for girls born with a bounty on their name. By noon, the first rider appeared, then two more. Dust trailed behind them, like a warning blown from God's own breath. They didn't bother hiding their weapons. Enoch stepped outside before they reached the gate. Alma stood behind him. A voice called out. Low. Familiar. Bo Mathers, but this time, his voice wasn't mocking. It was tired. Enoch, he said, I'm not here to fight. Enoch didn't lower his hand. You brought men. Mathers dismounted. Hands up. I brought them to keep me alive. Not take her. Alma's heart stuttered. Something wasn't right. Mathers took a slow breath. The family that wants her. They're not sending bounty hunters anymore. They hired mercenaries. Hired a whole damn gang. 15 riders at least. They'll be here by sunset. Enoch didn't blink. And you're telling me this because? Because I owe you, Mathers said. And because I saw what she did when she spared that man who tried to kill her. Alma's eyes narrowed. You were watching? Mathers nodded. I was waiting. Thought maybe I'd drag your body back to claim the price. But when I saw you bleeding and her kneeling beside you, I realized maybe the bounty's the lie. Enoch lowered his gun. Just an inch. What do you want? To help, they fortified the chapel, barricaded the windows, filled barrels with water, loaded every weapon they had. Alma stood beside Enoch as he laid a revolver in her hand. You don't have to fight, he said. She looked him in the eye. I'm not fighting for me. He hesitated. Then for who? She didn't say it, just brushed his hand. That was enough. The gang came at dusk. Just like Mathers said, 15 riders. Faces covered. Guns drawn. They didn't speak. Just surrounded the chapel like wolves closing in. Enoch fired first. The shot cracked through the air like thunder. A man fell from his horse. Then it began. Gunfire, shouting, smoke. Alma fired from the window, steady, fearless. Mathers took 2 down by the well before a bullet clipped his shoulder. Enoch moved like the ghost of war. Every shot precise, every movement anchored in something old and cold, but they were too many. Threw herself between them. The shot rang out. Silence followed. Enoch dropped to his knees beside her. Blood, too much blood, but she was breathing. He pressed his hand to the wound. Held her. I told you not to. He whispered. Her lips trembled. Then, you should have left me, she breathed. I couldn't. And that was the truth. The chapel burned behind them. But they didn't run. Not this time. Not anymore. The fire took the roof first. Ash drifted like snow over the field, settling in their hair, their skin, their breath. The pews collapsed in a hush of smoke and memory. Every sermon, every whispered prayer, gone in orange light, but they didn't move. Enoch held Alma in the grass behind the chapel, her blood warm against his chest. Mathers sat nearby, clutching his shoulder, eyes glazed but watchful. 3 more of the gang lay dead in the dust. The rest had fled into the hills, scattered by the fight they hadn't expected. The silence after was strange. Not peace, not grief, just space. Heavy and sacred, she stirred in Enoch's arms. "I ain't dying, am I?" His voice cracked. "No, you ain't." She smiled faintly. "You always lie so gentle." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You're not leaving me, her." Hand found his shirt, gripped it. "I wouldn't know where to go." They stayed there until the fire burned itself out, until the chapel was nothing but smoke and coals in the shape of things that used to be. By morning, the doctor from Willow Point came. Mathers rode through the night to get him. She would live. He said barely, but the bullet had missed anything vital. "By damn grace," the doctor muttered. Enoch didn't answer. He hadn't slept. He sat beside her, held her hand, whispered things no one else would hear. "I've buried too many." "Not you." Her breath came steady. Her eyes fluttered but didn't open. "I'll build it again," he said. "The chapel." From the ground. With my hands, she didn't reply. But her fingers tightened around his dot. It was enough. A week passed. Then 2. She healed slow. The kind of slow that teaches patience. Enoch cooked every meal, boiled her water, read aloud from that old book of Psalms she once found on her cot. Sometimes he paused to cry. Not sobbing, just tears, soft as mercy. Mathers stayed 3 more days, then saddled up. "You ain't like the men I used to ride with," he told Enoch. Enoch nodded. "I was, not anymore." Mathers tipped his hat to Alma. "You keep him honest," he said. She smiled. "I already do." Then he rode out into whatever kind of redemption the desert might still offer that spring. Enoch started digging new walls, a new roof. Every nail driven with quiet devotion. Alma helped when she could. She still limped, but her eyes were brighter. Now, like they'd seen death and decided to outlive it. One evening, as the sun poured gold over the new beams, she found him standing inside the skeleton of the chapel. She stepped up beside him. No words. He looked at her, not at her wound, not at her past. To her. "I thought I came here to hide," he said. "But I think I was always riding toward this." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You think it's safe now?" she asked. He looked out at the hills. "No," he said, "but I think we are." Summer settled in like a sigh. The land around the chapel breathed again, slow and warm, as if the earth itself had been waiting for the weight to lift. Flowers grew where bodies had fallen. Grass swallowed the scorch marks. The birds returned to the eaves, and the chapel stood again. Different this time, no longer a place of sermons, but of silence. Of second chances. Enoch carved the pews by hand. Not perfect, crooked in places, worn smooth in others, but real. Honest. Alma painted the door deep red, like blood. He teased. She shook her head. Like a heart. He didn't answer, just watched her from the steps, sunlight catching in her hair. She didn't look like the girl they'd sold. She looked like a woman who had survived the price and made herself priceless. They didn't marry, not in the way people expected. There was no dress, no preacher, just 2 hands meeting at the altar they rebuilt, and the quiet promise in their eyes. They grew a garden behind the chapel. Beans, corn, sunflowers. Alma laughed when the birds tried to steal the seeds. Enoch pretended to be angry, but he always left a little extra on the fence for them. He still kept his pistol, but it stayed in the drawer now, one night, as the wind rolled over the plains, and the stars crowded close. She found him sitting by the fire. He held the wooden sparrow she'd once kept on her windowsill. "I made a mistake," he said. She moved closer. "Which one?" "I thought I was here to save you." She waited, but it was the other way around. She sat beside him, took his hand. They didn't speak again that night. Didn't need to. The fire burned low, and the sky held them. Years later, a rider came through town, said he was hunting a man named Enoch. An outlaw turned priest. No one pointed to the chapel. No one mentioned the woman who wore old scars and a gentle smile. They just said the man he was looking for died a long time ago. The rider left, none the wiser, and the chapel doors stayed open. Always.to. The broken.to, the lost.to, those the world had given up on, because once a girl marked by fear and a man who forgot how to live stood in the ashes of what was and chose to begin again. Since that morning, the ranch never echoed with silence again. Have you ever mistaken someone's pain for danger? Tell us in the comments what this story meant to you. And if you believe in quiet redemption, subscribe to Silent Ranch.